Hello everybody and welcome to ChessDiagnostic. This is Andrew and I've been wanting to make this video for a while. I thought I had already made it at one point, but apparently not. This is a game, or I guess a series of games, that won me the Millionaire Chess under 2000 section for $12,000. So I'm titling this video How I Won $12,000 Playing Chess. A little bit sensational, but it is true. And I really wanted to go through these games just to show what I was thinking. I made a video last night and there were some comments, so people seem to like when you describe your thoughts for games you played. Now, of course, these aren't high-level games, but they are quite complicated and they were very fun to play. But keep in mind, they're 25-minute games and we were playing for big money, so it was very stressful. There were lots of blunders in all sections. But anyway, I was black, and I had made it to the final four out of about 100 players, so I felt very lucky to be here, and I felt very calm, which is pretty rare for me. So we're going to start. I was black, and it starts with d4, knight to f6, c4, e6. So after g3, I normally would play the Queen's Indian, but I just suddenly played bishop check, and then takes, and then after a castle, brings the bishop out. For some reason, I played d6. I was just really playing on intuition and trying to play very fast so that I wouldn't get into time trouble or have any problems with that. Because over the board, you can't just pre-move. You really have to keep your eye on time and make sure you don't get in time pressure, because it's very easy to lose once you get in time pressure in a real game. Alright, so he pushes his pawn forward. It's still equal at this point, developing my knight. And then I play e5, trying to establish a strong pawn chain and get my light square bishop out. He moves forward. I bring my knight back. I could play something like c6 eventually, but I have an idea to bring my knight back here and then play f5, which is what I do. So I bring my knight back. And then with f5, it's kind of a King's Indian type situation, or King's Indian defense, where we have this locked pawn chain, but I have some chances on the king side. He plays f4 to stop my advance. I bring my knight back. Of course, you want to keep all your pieces active. And actually, it's saying white is slightly better here, obviously because of his strong pawn center and some loose pawns, and the bishop on here is not active at all. Alright, so I played c6 just to try to break up his strong pawn center. He takes, now leaving me with a weak d6 backward pawn that could become a target of an attack. He takes, which is not really the best, because now my bishop has free development. I can activate my knight, and these weak pawns, they can become a problem, but really activity is the most important thing in the day. So I checked, activating my queen. Knight takes, and it's equal at this point still. So none of us have made any mistakes. He's going to reactivate his knight to f3 and possibly attack on the king side. Attacking my queen, I have to go back. And again, we're still equal. So instead of bringing his knight to f3, he brings it to h3, obviously preparing to bring it to g5. I activate my rook as well as protecting my d6 pawn, and I take with the knight because that knight was a little awkwardly placed and I wanted to re-centralize it. Still equal at this point. He solidifies that knight. He really should have just brought it back because it's not doing anything there on a4. Activating my bishop, and my development's slightly awkward. I really don't have anything. I really don't want to bring my bishop out here, although it looks like bishop to d7 or bishop to b7 are higher recommended, and thinking about it now would have been more logical, but I really wanted to keep an eye on this square, on the d5 square for some reason. But also just quick development of the bishop. He brings his knight in, attacking it, which obviously is a drawback of bringing my bishop to e6 instead of b7. And I just allow him to take if he wants. He didn't take. He's going to reactivate his knight, attacking my knight, and we're still equal. So we've played a pretty good game up to this point. Now all these opponents that I played in the final. I played 6 games total, so I'm not sure how long this video will be. All these games in the final were players that were rated above almost 2100, almost 2200. So to win the under 2000 section, you really had to be playing at about 21 to 2200 level. All right, I activate my knight, threatening that bishop. He takes, and now I have some weak pawns, but it's still equal. Threatening this fork here. I actually protect it, and it looks like he could play something like here, but actually after d5, now I'm threatening mate, and we'll just trade. It's still equal. So I did see that, activating his queen, and I moved f5, attacking his bishop as well as protecting my knight, but he actually comes up with a slightly complicated exchange, but it gives me a slight advantage. Check. Now he takes my rook, and he wins that knight. So I missed that, but actually I do have an advantage because it looks like I have an extra pawn in the game, and all my weaknesses are pretty much gone. I move my queen over to my king, as well as threatening his knight over here, so gaining a tempo. He has to move his queen back, and it's still saying black is slightly better. So I activate my bishop to protect my knight, as well as this c6 pawn, a multi-purpose move. And he starts to go wrong with b4. Now, white is not as active as he should be. His pieces are a little discoordinated. He should have done something just like knight to e2, bringing that knight in and getting rid of some weaknesses because my queen's hitting it. But he moves b4, and I move forward. I just start taking pawns, and here we get a tactical blunder by my opponent. Takes, and he didn't calculate to the end of the line, even though I did, and at the end here, he resigned after bishop to c6, pinning his knight and winning it, and I'm also 2 pawns up. So I won this game pretty easily. I didn't really do anything special. I was just trying to play logical moves. It really did come down to that. I just wanted to follow 100% my thought process, not really going too deep, but just following my basic understanding, and that led to this win. All right, so an okay game. We're going to go to the next one. Now, this game contains a lot of mistakes and a blunder by me. I was white. I played e4, d5, queen takes, knight to c3, the queen back, d4. So we're getting the Scandinavian, and actually this is quite a strong line for black with a6. I wasn't familiar with this line, but apparently my opponent had played it a lot and had won quite a few games with it. So he was very familiar with this line while I wasn't. Bishop back. Actually, bishop to d3 was slightly better, or bishop to b3, keeping the bishop active. But I moved it back. I wanted to be really solid because I figured my opponent knows this line really well. And it's actually a very good line for the Scandinavian that is not really played. All right, so queen to d2. I was deciding whether to castle queen side, but I decided eventually to castle king side here, preventing him from attacking. So I go king side castling, and now we're both fully active, and it's dead equal at this point. Bishop to f4, queen moves over, and my piece placement is a little awkward. I wasn't really sure what to do here. Again, when your opponent's following the same basic principles as you, the strength of your chess really relies on figuring out how to create chances. So he gets his c5 break. I try to close it off by d5, but now black actually has an advantage. And he could have just taken that pawn, but he starts attacking my queen. I have to move all the way back, and it's equal at this point. So he's solidified his position, and now I'm slightly passive, but I do have that protected passed pawn. And with my knight forward, I can occupy the f5 square, as well as attacking that knight. Moves back, activating my bishop, keeping my bishop active, and now with knight to f5, I felt pretty good about my position, but the computer's still rating it as equal. Bishop back. My opponent's playing very solidly at this point. I move my king over to play f5 to get a break there. But now my position starts to become a little cramped. He's activating his knight, threatening the bishop. I still play f4 anyway. But actually after the knight takes, he threatens. The knight moves back to a slightly passive square, and he could have played g5. Now, if he would have played something like g5, actually, even though he can win that piece, it's actually a big advantage for me. I missed it, but I started calculating it as soon as I saw he could play it. I can play knight to g4, and if he takes after queen to f4, even though black has material, it's actually rated around equal because I have pretty good chances, and his rook and bishop are not active, as well as my passed pawn that's cutting off some of his pieces. So my opponent decided not to allow complications for me. He played bishop to g7, and actually black has an advantage at this point, but with f5, he gives it away slightly. A better move would have been h5, just chasing my knight back. Check. Bishop forward, and now I have a slightly better position. I was threatening with the bishop forward to sack on f5 and get a kingside attack. He just stops that by trading, and I try to cut off his queen from the kingside. Now I'm threatening knight takes f5. He wants to swing his queen over to the kingside. And now it's dead equal. So we were actually playing pretty good at this point. I lock in that very strong passed pawn. Although it's blocked by the knight, it's equal at this point because it's hard to figure out where to go. Alright, so queen to f7. His queen's on the king side, and now we're equal. So we've just been playing equal up to this point, trying to gain chances. He pushes that pawn, I lock it off, and now it's going to become a weak pawn, but it's not really a huge issue. He has that very strong light square bishop, which has no counterpart against it, and there's not really much I can do. My plan is to try to play h5. I activate my queen. Now his rooks are active. That knight can become active even though it's blockading the pawn, and here I make a huge blunder. So I thought I just miscounted, and I still won this game, but I just miscounted, and I give away a piece for a pawn. So actually, before that, it was equal, and I could have just piled on that f5 pawn, and I probably would have broke him down eventually, but with accurate defense, he's doing okay. So I took. And now, even though he has an extra piece, it's still a little bit hard to play because I have that passed pawn that's locked in, locking that knight in. And he tries to go for an attack. Black is actually winning at this point. But after rook takes c3, the rook takes. He should have just took with bishop to g2 check. And then I would have some problems once he activates that knight. He could swing his king over to stop my passed pawn, and he'd win eventually. But he only had about 2 seconds at this point, or I had 23 seconds. You can see on the clock, he ended up with 0. I won on time in this position. After rook to c7, attacking his bishop, he moved it up, and then he ran out of time. So I was actually really quickly keeping an eye on the clock, and he was able to get to this point with just a few seconds, but after the bishop moved forward, I could have taken the knight, and we would have been equal again, even though he lost on time. So I called time. I won both the games, and I'm seeing this video is almost at 15 minutes. So this was the half final to determine the last match. So I'll make another video tomorrow covering the 4 games of how I won $12,000 playing chess in the Millionaire Open. Well, I guess technically not the Open, the under 2,000 section. All right, so I beat, let's see his name. It looks like Tae Wee Zun. I think he was a Malaysian guy. and he had played before, it looks like, but he was around 2100 after this tournament. And the opponent I played next was Jagpreet Singh, and we'll see those games soon in another video. Thanks for watching. Hey everybody, thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed this video. Hit the like button, leave a comment, and subscribe for future videos. See you in the future.